The water of Lake Texcoco is black, cold, and thick with the metallic tang of blood. On the narrow mud causeways of Tenochtitlan, Hernán Cortés is running for his life. Behind him, the night is torn apart by the terrifying, low-pitched roar of the jaguar skin drums. Historically, this was the night the Spanish escaped the Aztec capital, carrying stolen gold. But tonight, there is no escape. The Spanish swords are heavy, their gunpowder is wet, and the warriors pursuing them are not weak, coughing, or dying of a mysterious fever. They are fast, furious, and entirely untouched by the white man's disease. An obsidian-edged wooden blade shears through a conquistador's steel armor with a sickening crunch. Cortés looks back just in time to see his rear guard dragged into the dark waters. In our history, a tiny microscopic virus did 90% of the conquest's heavy lifting. But in this timeline, that virus failed. Rewind. To understand how the greatest empire in the Americas survived, and how the entire modern world was set on a collision course with a sovereign Mesoamerican superpower, we have to look at the single biological fluke that changed everything.
Backstory.
It is April of 1520. A Spanish ship drops anchor off the coast of Veracruz. On board is a Spanish soldier named Panfilo de Narvaez, and among his crew was an enslaved African man named Francisco de Eguía. Historically, Eguía is remembered for carrying one of the deadliest biological weapons in human history, variola major. Smallpox. In our timeline, this single disease tore through the heart of Mexico. It traveled faster than any horse, killing up to 40% of the indigenous population in a matter of weeks, including the brilliant Aztec Emperor Cuitláhuac. The empire was decapitated before the war even truly began. But what if the Aztec population possessed a rare, genetic resistance to the disease? Perhaps a long-lost ancestor's exposure to a native animal virus had primed their immune systems generations ago, leaving them completely unaffected by the smallpox outbreak of 1520. Think about the sheer scale of that shift. When Eguía steps ashore, the virus spreads, but instead of leaving a trail of rotting bodies and collapsed villages, it simply vanishes into the humid jungle air. No fever. No pustules. No devastating collapse of the imperial leadership. Before we see how the healthy Aztec army reacts to the invaders, I want to ask you, if you were Cuitláhuac, would you have executed every single Spanish prisoner immediately, or would you have kept some alive to study? Let me know in the comments below. With their immune systems unbroken, the Aztecs do not lose their emperor in the winter of 1520. Cuitláhuac remains on the throne, healthy, battle-hardened, and fiercely intelligent. When Cortés attempts his famous retreat on the night of June 30th, 1520, the legendary La Noche Triste, he doesn't face a city crippled by plague. He faces a mobilized force of over 100,000 healthy warriors. The battle is a slaughter. The Spanish are weighed down by 40,000 gold pesos they tried to smuggle out of the palace. As they try to cross the gaps in the causeways, they are swarmed by hundreds of high-speed Aztec war canoes. Cortés and a handful of his officers manage to crawl ashore on the mainland, wet and shivering. Historically, they fled to Tlaxcala, where their indigenous allies nursed them back to health and helped them rebuild their army. But this time, the Tlaxcalan leadership looks at the situation with cold, calculating eyes. In our history, they stuck with the Spanish because they believed the Aztecs were cursed by the gods, visibly dying of pestilence. Now, the Aztecs are as strong as ever. The Spanish, meanwhile, are bleeding, shivering, and reduced to fewer than 100 effective fighting men. The Tlaxcalan Senate realizes they have backed the wrong side. Instead of offering Cortés a safe haven, they surround his remaining men in the middle of the night. By sunrise, the conquistadors are in wooden cages, bound for the sacrificial altars of Tenochtitlan. The first European invasion of Mexico has been utterly, violently erased. But the Spanish Empire is not a beast that retreats easily. Across the Atlantic, the gold of the New World is a prize too massive to ignore. Emperor Charles V is already commissioning a second, massive armada. And this time, they aren't sending explorer adventurers. They are sending the Spanish tercios, the most feared professional infantry in Europe. But here is where our story takes a turn that historians never saw coming. With Cortés captured, the Aztecs do not simply celebrate and return to life as usual. Emperor Cuitláhuac is acutely aware that more pale strangers will eventually come from across the sea. He makes a radical, world-altering decision. Instead of sacrificing every single Spanish captive on the pyramids, he spares 12 select prisoners, blacksmiths, armorers, and gunpowder makers. By the spring of 1522, the shorelines of Lake Texcoco are lined not with floating gardens, but with dozens of roaring smelting furnaces. The Aztecs forced their captives to teach them how to heat iron ore to 1,200 degrees Celsius, a temperature far higher than Mesoamerican bronze working had ever required. They begin reverse engineering the Spanish weapons. Within 3 years, the Aztec elite military orders are no longer just carrying obsidian-edged wooden clubs. A specialized guard of 1,500 elite warriors is fully equipped with forged steel breastplates and local copper-cast muskets. Just wait until you see what happens when the Spanish warships finally drop anchor off the coast of Veracruz in 1525, expecting a primitive kingdom and instead finding a wall of gunpowder smoke. Before we witness that explosive clash, let me ask you, if you were the Aztec Emperor, would you have integrated Spanish ironworking immediately, or would you have feared it as dark magic? Tell me what you think in the comments. The false peace ends on March 14, 1525. A massive Spanish armada of 38 heavy galleons, carrying 9,000 professional tercios infantrymen and 2,000 horses, appears on the eastern horizon. The Spanish commanders expect to find a land weakened by internal tribal division. They assume they can march inland, plant their banners, and claim the gold. Instead, as the first wave of longboats hits the sandy beaches of Veracruz, the jungle literally explodes. The Aztecs do not charge blindly into the Spanish steel. They wait in silent, disciplined formation. Hidden in the dense tree line are 14 brass cannons, cast from the rich copper mines of Guerrero. The first volley of Aztec cannon fire tears through the landing boats, turning wood and flesh into a red mist. What follows is the most shocking military upset of the 16th century. The Spanish tercios, the most feared infantry in Europe, scramble onto the wet sand only to find themselves face to face with a combined indigenous coalition of 150,000 warriors. But this coalition is different. They are wearing quilted cotton armor reinforced with locally forged steel plates, and they are utilizing Spanish-style cavalry tactics with horses captured from the first expedition. The battle is over before the sun sets. The Spanish suffer a staggering 60% casualty rate on the beach, and the remaining forces are disarmed, captured, and marched inland. Over 4,000 steel muskets and dozens of Spanish horses fall into Aztec hands. The European dream of conquering Mesoamerica is dead. By the year 1600, the geopolitical map of the world is completely unrecognizable. Tenochtitlan has grown into a bustling metropolis of over 500,000 people, its skyline dominated not by wooden temples, but by massive stone shipyards housing a fleet of ocean-going vessels. The Aztec Empire, now recognized by European powers as a sovereign superpower, signs a historic 50-year peace treaty with Spain, secured by the export of 20 tons of silver annually. Rather than being looted, the silver of Mexico is traded legally, stabilizing the global economy and fueling the Ming dynasty in China. This brings us back to that dark night in 1520 on the cold, black waters of Lake Texcoco. When we first saw Hernán Cortés running for his life, watching his rearguard being dragged into the metallic tasting water, it looked like a standard, bloody defeat. But now we see that moment for what it truly was. It was not just the end of an expedition, it was the birth of a new global empire. The iron armor that sank to the bottom of the lake that night was not lost. It was recovered, melted down, and used to forge the very tools that kept the Americas completely free. If you think the survival of the Aztecs redefined the globe, just wait until you see what happened when the Inca Empire used their own biological immunity to push the Portuguese out of the Amazon.